Hi guys, welcome back. A few changes have happened to the app since the last time I recorded this. This is supposed to be the fifth lesson on this subject of using Threejs to an application that will be rendered as expectedly rendered in MetaQuest and MetaQuest 3. So I'm going to use this lesson to run through the entire code just so that we can catch up with what's already there. Some of the code is in that's been commented out. I'll sort of try to explain what's in there. So basically, on the left, we'll say that that's the VS Code asset is empty. We probably want to create a folder of images and maybe the folder CSS all in assets. Now I'll keep that closed. JavaScript has the free underscore dev folder. So essentially, that means this code indirectly, or rather, uses relative path to access the contents of the 3.js 3dev folder. 3.js libs also has other relevant class files that are not part of the 3.js library itself. And we have the app.js file, which is the other file that the index.html links to. And our coding will be done within the app.js file. Models folder will contain models that we intend to import into the environment. Now, I've commented the code that does that out because I would like to probably go through that again and probably also explore what the model looks like. And the sessions, I'm going to have self delete that. So it's other lessons I've built beyond this level. So since I'm so reverting back to dealing with this, I'm just going to leave that out. So ignore that. I'm going to provide a link to this uh, lesson in the hub as well, so you can access this files at this stage. But next thing that I'll do is to go through the code. Essentially, the only code we need to go through here is just the app.js file, which is the one that's linked from index.html file. This is the index.html file. And within that file, I link to the app.js file. And importantly, I specify this as a module. If I go into app, it has a class exhibition builder, and I export that class as so I need to sort of export that here. But again, the reason why I might not need to export it here is because app.js or index.html is not directly using that class. It's not importing that class. It's just including the class as a reference point because the class itself is instantiated within this file. And then I call render scene, which is a static variable. But if we go back up to the code, the beginning of the code, we'll see the different. I'll just press Ctrl B to close this. I will see the different links, references. I import three from the CDN. Yeah, so you could either import it from CDN or you could use the file I've created. But essentially, I rely on this simply to pull the classes. Well, I rely on this version of Threejs to get my Threejs object. And then essentially everything else is from this particular folder within server. 3dev examples, 3dev and 3dev all through. So if we look here, we'll see 3dev. So essentially 3dev SRC animation, for instance, SRC animation and animation action. So I get that class from here, animation action, which is this. Well, of course, you never have to go in there. You only have to use access all this through your app.js. So after that, I create a class, exhibition builder. You can name it anything. I create static variables, camera scene, renderer, object controls, slide controls, first person controls, active and clock, GUI and clock. So I've so repeated this, so I probably need to delete this. The constructor calls certain functions to run the entire application. Generate scene, generate camera, renderer controls, light. So I could add other functions here. Essentially, when you're writing this, Copilot will help you generate the titles of the functions because it already knows it functions you intend to perform. Finally, there's a first person controls call here. Set up first person controls, which means that when your app runs, it runs in first person control. You can also add other controls there, such as object controls. To generate scene, which is the first call, simply creates the scene and includes as a reference to this static variable scene, and then sets this variable saying equals that. And that is simply because while writing code, you don't want to be repeating this all the while, all the same, all the time. Rather use a single word. So you have send the add access and then return string. So it basically returns string within a list. For generate camera, which is the next thing, again, I create the static, I set that static variable, the reference of a perspective camera. I set the normal default values, and then I set a variable as well, camera, to that static variable. This is a default position. I could either use this approach or I could do this. So I decided to do this so I could easily delete this. And that means that I could come down back here to modify this as much as I want. Same thing goes here. I could change the rotation if I want, so I could delete all that. I could make the camera look at a particular location, but I've commented out so it doesn't affect my debugging. Because first of all, you want to know that your code runs before actually making it look at a particular location. So generate renderer simply creates the renderer. For this renderer, you need the scene on the camera, and then you set the renderer equals to a variable with anti-alias true, so you don't have jagged edges. And the renderer equals a static variable, and then you get the WebGL scene from the index.html. That's a WebGL scene variable. Or we could name it WebGL canvas, and then click that. You can see already that it's modifying the interface because it's running real time. I'm just going to modify this, and that should be fine now. So then render the set size, window inner width, inner height. I call renderer.render scene camera, and then I return the render as well. So in this case as well, I could as well put this as a list, which means it could be retrieved from the list as well. So the next function there is generate controls. What you understand is that if I comment these guys out, the scene seems not to render. So let's see what's under generate controls that makes it not render. Come down here, see what generate controls is. Generate controls basically generates the object controls. Retrieves the same camera renderer from a function called getSceneObject. Now, if we go check what getSceneObject is, it simply accesses the constants, the static variables, camera, renderer, scene, object control, and returns them in a list. Now, I like to change this format, but what it means is that when you set a variable as this equals to that function call, you get those variables back. You get access to those constant variables. So if I come back here, I'll see that when this call is made, I've commented this out because it's a little call to self first also controls. So I use this variable constant to retrieve the response from that. It gets to return same camera and renderer. So if you come down to that, you see that on same camera and renderer, so it ignores all the control. So that means that only three variables are retrieved. But I'd like to change that because it places a requirement on that function to always return those objects in order, which might not be the case all the time. But anyway, this function I've created the object controls because object controls camera renderer dot element exhibition builder dot object control because object control. So the reason why this has probably stopped is because it's trying to call the object controls and it's not getting to. If I However, in order not to complicate our discussion, I'll simply leave that for now. So I could simply come back up here and comment this, and then it pops up on the screen. The axis pops up on the screen. So back to your controls. Your controls basically generates the object controls. It could be a first person control. In that case, I'll need to make that call to, or what I could do here is generate object controls and copy that, come back up here and replace that call to be fine. So that's the current status of the code. The other bits of the code has to do with the first person controls, which are commented out, the generate lights, which generates a directional light, ambient light, and sphere light. These are simple, typical codes within Threejs, generated directional light and adding the directional light to the scene, generating an ambient light into the scene, generating hemisphere light and it's the same. Here I have another function that generates certain uh, mesh objects, which I've commented out. For now, we don't need that. And that actually continues with certain other calls to create the torus geometry mesh on material for torus geometry and addition of the mesh to the scene. And this call, generate exhibition model, basically loads the 3D model we're going to build in Blender. And that call, it will be exported from Blender in GLTF format and then export it to the scene. So that will come under the modules folder. We already have a model in there, but we're going to explore that module first before we import it to Blender. This animate is where all the objects that need to be re-rendered based on the clock count or uh, especially most of the controls, especially most of the controls, they need to be called every frame. So they're passed under the animate. So in other words, I simply make the call to the animate from the render, go back up from the render scene function, and then everything the animate runs. And then what you have is just the static get scene object and press. So basically, we've gone through the code in this lesson. In the next lesson, we'll start to build on the code to add a 3D model into the scene. Thanks. See you there. Bye.